I believe some of you, but maybe not all of you, are familiar with our quarterly fiduciary process review. Chris Delaney had been leading it. Anyone in the future may also see the name Thomas Matley on requests. These requests, we identify accounts that would be considered higher risk to the firm and to you. So they are typically accounts that have a lower trading volume, and accounts that maybe have higher cash held in it. And that would include cash and cash equivalents. So money market sweeps and any like cash money market funds, just because they can be identified easier in like audits. So on a quarterly basis, we run these two reports and then we cross-reference them. So we are going to reach out to financial professionals who hit one report, the other report, or potentially both reports. And the purpose of this is to ensure you guys have a good fiduciary process in your office, that if the SEC or a state regulator would walk in, you guys would be comfortable saying, I understand John hasn't traded in a year and a half. However, you know, John has chose not to take our recommendations, or John is very conservative, and here's the information showing you I've met with John, 4 times in the last 2 years, and the process that we go through each time. We also want to make sure if you're not meeting with John, that you still are looking at those accounts and still managing them appropriately based on the type of relationship you have with John. We understand that a discretionary relationship and a non-discretionary relationship is very different in your guys' environment. So we understand that each of those are going to have maybe a little bit different function for you in your day-to-day roles for those counts. Our process, we will send you a notification asking for a subset of clients. We try to limit it to 6 or less. We don't want to take a lot of your time. Your time is best served with your clients. We completely want to support that. So we want to ensure we're getting a good subset and a good cross-section of your clients. So depending on the programs and platforms you use, you may see various programs and platforms being asked for. So our WealthPort program, if you utilize any of our FlexMap partners, or if you utilize our legacy CMAP or Cambridge managed account platform. So you may end up seeing all of them, or if you're focused solely on WealthPort, you may just be seeing those as well. We are going to ask for documentation showing the services you provided to the client, because the account itself may or may not support active management styles. We love to see the use of a CRM. That is like, best case scenario, but we understand not everyone likes a CRM. Not everyone wants to use a CRM. So we do try to push for documentation that is stored in a way that cannot be modified. So if you like pen and paper, scan it in, save it as a PDF, take a picture of it, email it to yourself. If you use a CRM, there's a lot of download functions that make this a lot easier on you as a financial professional sending documentation. And the other thing I really like is having agendas or templates. The purpose of that is it ensures that you're covering the important topics with your clients each time you're meeting or each time you're reviewing those clients themselves. So we like to see like a review, so information on the account as it exists today, any recommendations that you would have on those agendas that you discussed with the clients, and potentially any action items. So, what are next steps for you, or what are next steps for your clients? That same type of agenda, if any of you guys do financial planning, can be used almost interchangeably across. So information about the facts, information about what you recommend, and information about action items. So you could create a very easy template that could work almost entirely across your fee-based business. Those templates, obviously if you don't get something covered, or if you don't have any recommendations, that's also very important to note. The concept of no change is a recommendation. And sometimes that's like the biggest thing that we miss in notes is clients doing great, but what does that really mean? Like, client's account is still acting as the client's needs, no recommendations to change at this time. That is best case scenario in any kind of notes that we have. Once we get that information from you, whether, like I said, it's handwritten, it's scanned in, it's dictated, it's CRM, our goal is to review it from a compliance standpoint to see what information is included in those notes, see what information is consistently added. You know, we may pick out one note and say, hey, this is a really great note for this client on this date. This is how we'd recommend all of your notes being. We don't want to recreate your process. We want to smooth out your will. So we don't want to recreate the will. We want to provide feedback that'll complement what you're already doing. That's why we want to see what you're doing before we say, hey, we want to see XYZ. So your feedback will be sometimes general in nature and sometimes very specific in nature. And if you have clients that you have great relationships that we ask for, we are going to go back and say, hey, this client's notes are great. Here's what we expect. Maybe there's a couple of things to tweak. And then, you know, depending, you may hear from us again in a year, 2 years, 3 years. Once the recommendations are provided, depending on what they are, it may include having a detailed conversation with you saying, hey, we'd like to talk further. You know, we'd like to help you set up a process. We just feel like there's a higher risk in your book of business in this aspect, or it could be, you know, you're doing a great job. Thank you for your time. Please let us know if you have any questions or concerns. We do tend to stick with, like I said, the managed accounts. You may or may not have questions on commission aspect. My team can help you with that, but we do stay with the managed accounts. The other piece that my team gets a lot of questions on focuses around unresponsive clients during this time. So I don't know if any of you have had an issue where a client is just not responding to you. Maybe it's a non-discretionary relationship. You can't do much without having the client say yes, or the client just hasn't really given you any updates in a while. We do have guidelines for that that would include sending the client a notification in writing, so whether that be email or in a letter form that has some type of receipt stating the client received it. So whether it's a read receipt in an email or some type of trackable means in the mail, or even, you know, a signed form back saying the client actually got it, indicating that you would like to meet with the client to review their account and that you know, you've looked at their account, it's really time to meet. And then if you guys use CIR statements, performance reporting tool, you know, a copy of that as well, just so the client can see for themselves what their accounts have done or is doing. If the client continues to be non-responsive at about 18, 24 months, we would recommend really reviewing the relationship with that client to see if the type of managed account you have is in the best interest of them. And what I mean by that is if the client really wants a managed account but doesn't want to have to interact so much, maybe it should be discretionary. Or if the client is not interacting at all to be able to manage anything, maybe, you know, to reduce the risk to you and your firm, you say maybe we should go to a commissionable account. You know, these are really going to be trades I can solicit, recommend, but it's really going to be trades that you say yes or no to 100%. That should be done ongoing for all your clients about every year to 2 years. In general, you should be able to support the relationship with the client, whether it's managed discretionary, whether it's WealthPort, whether it's CMAP, whether it's FlexMap. And you should have information somewhere in your files that you could submit to us that says, hey, yes, we reviewed this. This is why it's still this type of relationship. We won't specifically ask for that, but it is a focus of the SEC. So it is a focus to ensure that you are providing the recommendations in the best interest of the client at the onset of the relationship and ongoing throughout the entire relationship. So it's not just a one and done for you and your clients. It's important that you're doing it consistently. If there are any concerns with the documentation, we would contact your supervisor. We would contact you. Depending on the amount of concerns, we could have to do some internal aspect to ensure that we identified the concerns and addressed the concerns. So It's never a bad thing for us to address concerns. We're protecting you, we're protecting us, we're protecting your supervisor. So the goal of doing that is to say, yes, we identified it. If the regulator comes into us, yes, we addressed it. And yes, here is how it improved. And here's our steps that we took. So I don't want anyone to ever think that because we said there are issues that we're trying to, you know, put something out on a permanent record. We are wanting to protect everyone involved in this. We are on your side. We want to make sure you guys feel comfortable asking questions, asking about particular clients, managing your book of business. And I know it's not easy. I know that you guys all have clients who probably call you on a daily basis, and you probably have clients you haven't heard from in 3 to 6 months that are just like, go and do your thing. So we know that your book of business is very vast and different. So we want to make sure that we are providing you all the resources necessary. One of the biggest resources we have on the CIR2 website is our fiduciary process guide for fee-based business. I can share a link with you, Tracy, for that. It goes through, it provides templates, it goes through and develops, I think it's a 6-piece process, talks about relationship, reviews, and then it's like a continuous circle, making sure the relationship's good, the reviews, expectations, all of that. So it's a huge guide for anyone doing fee-based business. We also do have some templates if anyone's interested in them on attestation. So if you have a client that maybe just isn't a huge responder, we do have the ability to do like annual attestations with them. If your supervisor's okay with that, they can sign and say, yes, I received the services as I expected them. We also have a template on CIR2 that's the starting point for an agenda for you guys. So it talks about a portfolio review, and it talks about sections that we would find important to do that review. Some of it's a pre-review, so getting in the account, looking at it, and then it goes through those recommendations, actions, and all of that. So those are all on the CIR2 website and can be shared very quickly with the team if anyone is interested in them. I do want to open it up now to see if anyone has questions or has been through this or anything like that. I don't want to continue talking on my side because I do want it to be interactive if possible. Has anyone been through this recently or is going through it now? Super quiet group this morning, Tracy.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay. Yeah, if you can definitely, send some of the links to those templates, that would be great. I know this is a big concern for regulators, and the important thing, I think, like you said, is having a CRM. If you don't have a CRM, you really need to have a good process in place. So I'm sure that's, yes.
Yeah, the CRM really makes it easier on you guys as well. I know that a lot of them have some really good workflows. So you can flag
Mhm.
those triggers to say, hey, it's time to review, or hey, it's time for, or so-and-so didn't get back to you on this. So the CRM is best case scenario for notes. It also makes it super easy for you guys to send. You guys can typically download it straight out and send it in instead of having to go through electronic or paper files.
Right. And I would say the biggest problem I see, and luckily it's not a lot of people, but what I have seen is you guys ask for, information, review, documentation, and you kind of get back a very short, everything's good, I met with the client, everything's fine, blah, 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 but there's no detail there.
Correct.
It's really important that you have the detail of your meetings, and the process you have in place, that kind of thing. That's what's going to keep you out of the crosshairs. So I guess my point is, don't take it lightly. You really need to think about how you want to respond to those and the kind of notes that you need to be keeping, and how often you're meeting with clients and all that. So I don't want to see anyone getting into bad situations. So be sure you're taking it seriously, and keeping track of meetings with clients and what you discussed and the whole gamut.
And to add on to that, documentation note that says met with client, no action taken. The regulators want to feel they have a sense of the relationship you have with your client. So that doesn't, from a reviewer perspective, met with client, no changes needed, doesn't tell me a whole lot. However, if we take the same client, the same meeting, and say, met with client, client has concerns about political risk, the elections, does not want to make any changes to the portfolio asset allocations, no changes recommended by me at this time. Those are two entirely different notes of the same meeting. And to add on to piggyback onto the client that is absolutely not responsive is the client that is your best friend from high school that you see 3 times a week, and you don't have client file documentation because they're my high school friend that I see 3 times a week. Make sure that you have in your process to have the meeting notes for all your clients. The SEC does not go and cherry pick if that is a mother, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, best friend to the client that you have a hard time getting in the door. They want to see those same type of review process for all of those clients. And as far as recommendations, we go through and read the SEC's exam priority, 25, 28 pages. So you guys don't have to. Last year and this year, I've looked at the exam priorities that was released just, I think, a week ago. The SEC is calling out in a big way fee review. Does the fee make sense? And that can be everything from how it's managed. All these things fit together in one puzzle. A fee review, assets in the account, risk management, and management strategy. Does that client still fit for a cap account? Does the fee structure fit the client's risk tolerance with my objectives, with everything we're trying to do with this account? And while reviewing all of those things, our advisors are really good at doing that almost instantaneously. You've been in the business for years, you know your clients, you process so much information in such a short amount of time. It's like you have to slow yourself down and think about which way you turn the doorknob to open the door, and then writing that down on paper, because you are analyzing all those things so quickly that you're not giving yourself enough credit as an advisor for the thought that goes behind the recommendation. Is slow yourself down that little bit and allow yourself to write down that all those things were considered. You've considered the fees, you've considered the risk, you've considered the management strategy, you've considered the assets. So it's a matter of giving yourself credit for the work you're doing that you're so good at, because you do it every day and it's second nature, and that's your relationship. And that's sometimes easier said than done. It is, oh, I'm going to have to go back to my first year of being an advisor and have to slow down my process. Not entirely. One sentence can cover all 4 of those big items. Reviewed the portfolio with the client, discussed current happenings, what's going on in the client's life, what are their objectives, what is the client's anxiety, is there any anxiety around surrounding market and recommendations or the portfolio, and it really, you can hit all 4 of those in a short amount of time. But don't be afraid to give yourself credit for doing the thinking you're already doing.
That's a great point, Chris, because you know, sometimes I think we view these kinds of details and requirements as a pain in the butt. But at the same time, man, if a client is questioning you or there's a chance that they might be filing a complaint against you, having all these details and being consistent, it just goes such a long way to keeping people out of trouble. So,
Well, the phone calls that I find interesting are usually the ones after the fact. It was just a couple of months ago, I got a phone call from one of our advisors that I had reviewed a year and a half ago. And the client had had a couple of meetings, and the advisor had taken my recommendations, just a second, and had really taken it to heart and improved his process. And the client came back a year and a half later and said, I'm really not happy with you. Look at my portfolio. Look at, and the advisor had documented everything that they had recommended. And the client said, no, I don't want to do that. No, don't want to do that. I just want to hold everything where it is. And the documentation had the client going, oh, you know what? You're right.
yep,
So it
exactly.
doesn't even have to be from the regulatory perspective. Sometimes clients' memory is hindsight isn't 2020. It's they see how they remember it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not have any disputes. Let's cut that off beforehand. Let's say be able to open up the notes and say, hey, see, we talked about all these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easier conversation than getting anything legal involved, that's for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Does anyone have any questions for these ladies or about the process or, um, Chris has had actual phone calls with some of the people in the branch about how to do the process correctly and maybe take a look at the process you have now and give you suggestions and that kind of thing. So, if any of you are a little concerned about this, or maybe you don't feel like maybe you're doing things as consistently as you should, you should feel free to reach out and set up a call because you don't, yeah. This
Please
is
do.
something you don't want to get in hot water about. It's a real pain. So
Yeah,
As-
we'd rather have you guys talk to us and maybe not like what we say initially than have the same type of conversation with the SEC. So
mm,
we like to be the bad people in this situation because it's a lot easier for us to say, hey, there's a concern, here's where it is, and here's what you'd recommend, versus the SEC coming in and saying the same thing.
And I have a lot of strategies. Our team has a lot of strategies for, hey, this is the way that you like to keep your client file documentation. Maybe I know something that is the best return on investment for your compliance buck.
right. Go ahead, Tom.
I have a question that's probably going to demonstrate some of my paranoia being a recovering lawyer. But anyway, have you seen the SEC and as a sole practitioner that, finds always with these conversations kind of more and more daunting, the regulatory oversight stuff? Have you seen the SEC make an assertion that if you've improved an improvement of your documentation is an admission that you had bad documentation before?
I have not seen that. I think
So you implement new process. It's like, see, you had crappy process, and we're going back 3 years.
I think I think there's a big enough push on the side of let's go digital. Let's start filing things in a secure place that is time and date stamp protected. I think there's enough industry-wide push to modernize client file documentation, that we're in a really good place time-wise for modifications to be made without it being, hey, I've caught you at something. Maybe at some point in time that could have been true, but right now the regulators themselves are really wanting things to evolve, to be stored in that secure digital location, and in that time and date stamp format, like in your CRM. So maybe at some point in time in the past, or maybe at some point in time in the future, right now I think we're well positioned to make changes. Yeah.
There's
I
no, so in your mind, there's no real danger in kind of improving process.
I
I would
think
say
there's a
no.
I
I
would
would
see there
also
being a
add,
greater risk to not.
Right, right. I mean, it's Hobson's choice, probably.
yeah, I would also add that with the regulatory landscape as it's been in the last 4, 8 years, they're expecting you to make changes.
Yeah.
So they're expecting Reg BI changes, they're expecting DOL rule changes. So they're expecting to see a difference from what you were doing 2016, 2020 to 2024. So, and they're expecting Cambridge to be your compliance partner because that's our goal, that's our intention, that's what we're here for. So they're expecting us to find these issues as well. So I've not seen anyone get in trouble because they changed what they've done. I have seen people get in trouble because they didn't change what they did.
You really can't be Columbo or Madlock anymore. You just can't. You just can't.
Agreed.
Those are that dates you
That's
for me.
okay. I
Okay, see
know
that?
the reference, so it dates me
Okay,
too a
okay.
little bit.
So you got to really like catch up and like they're not gonna. You might be able to find it, but they're still gonna not like it if you show them everything on yellow pads.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well,
Well,
damn.
but there are advisors that are keeping their notes on they write something down on a yellow pad. I don't have a problem with that. Once that is then scanned and uploaded
Scanned.
into
Right.
a
Right.
system,
Scanned. Right. Right.
is sometimes scribbling leads to thoughts and ideas, and I'm a advocate for the hand to brain aspect of thinking through something. In the same with on reports, if an advisor prints out CIR statements and then makes these all kind of notes in the margin, so long as it's something where I have a sense of the conversation, it's not just numbers. If it's just numbers, as a reviewer, I'm not seeing the thoughts or the sense of the conversation with the client. But if are words along with it, if there's thought to go along with it, that in my mind can be uploaded to that file location, and that can be very adequate, very compliant client file. That's where I'm saying is there's so many strategies. Is the first thing I'd like to see our advisors do is analyze themselves. What kind of technology person are you? And how are you most likely to get thoughts out of your brain? Is it speaking? Is it handwriting? Is it typing? Is it another thing that I'm not thinking of? And that leads to some conversations on these one-on-one consultations where I have things in my toolbox that can help.
Any other questions? Okay, sounds like we're good. If you ladies can send me some info that I can pass along to everybody. This was recorded and I'm gonna post it. We'll be posting it out on the website. This is an important topic, so I hope you all take some time to review the things that we send you and make sure that your process is in place.
Tracy, would you also be willing to share mine and Chris's contacts as well as the team? That way, we want you guys to have direct
Definitely. Yeah.
lines to us. If you guys do see something, or maybe you're just not comfortable saying it in front of a group, we're here to answer all those questions. So I'll make sure, Tracy, you get my contact directly, Chris's, and then the teams as well, in case for some reason we're not in.
Yep,
Yes,
definitely.
please. We review a lot of documentation and spreadsheets, so the advisor phone calls are the highlight of the day. Please. I ask for you to interrupt the day a little bit from time to time. Those are some of the funnest, best conversations I've ever had. So
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, very much. I appreciate you doing this. This is important. So thanks for taking the time.
and thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.